Planning and zoning update, number 6. I assume that's going to be you again, Ty?
Yeah, and I invited Lee, if that's okay.
That's right.
The planning commission has just been working on 3 major tasks, and in the meeting, I think they're looking for some feedback as well as provide an update of where they're at. And so, if it's okay, I'll turn the time to Lee to go through all those, and then I won't mess up any of the messaging.
I like it.
Between the 2. And I appreciate her coming because she had other things to do tonight, and I have my notes. I was going to take a stab at it, but I just think it's we'll make a lot more progress if I don't mess up any of the communication.
You asked the Planning Commission about 3 different things. One was a revision to our land use planning ordinance that addresses RV parks. Another was the question of parking RVs throughout the town on the street or on private property. And the third was to take a look at whether Monticello should regulate short-term housing rentals. We looked at all of those at our last meeting, which was earlier this month. We had the second public hearing on the short-term rentals, and then we discussed the RV thing. So let me start with what we think is the simplest. The Planning Commission believes that if the City Council wants to move forward with altering the existing RV park ordinance to make it easier for park owners to improve their properties or for new properties to be constructed or laid out here in town, that's probably going to be a relatively straightforward fix. It's just one piece of a code. It's not interleaved with all bunches of other codes. It kind of stands by itself. And we understand pretty much what the park owners and the developers are interested in seeing changed, and we think we can move fairly quickly on doing that. So we're going to work on that beginning with our next month's meeting, unless you tell me differently tonight.
And that's for the RV park?
Yes. Sorry I didn't memorize all of the code numbers for you, Cindy.
Oh, come on. 15-something, right?
The second item was the question of what to do with RVs within the town that people own, and they have to put them somewhere because we don't have a commercial storage yard for RVs. So boats, trailers, motor homes, trailers for your snowmobiles and your ATVs and all that kind of thing. If people want them to be safe and where they can watch them, they have to be in front of their house on the public street, or they have to be somewhere in the yard. And currently, city code precludes all of those options. So if you've got something in town, right now you're violating city code. The city wisely has chosen not to enforce that because the owners have no options except to take it outside of town someplace. So the challenge to the Planning Commission is to figure out how to allow and where to allow the parking of these privately owned recreational devices in a way that doesn't impede public thoroughfares or address or cause safety issues. It is not going to be an easy fix. We tackled this several years ago, and there were a lot of concerns raised and not very many good answers to those things. I don't think those concerns have gone away. They're pretty much the same concerns that caused you to bring it back to the Planning Commission. The other difficulty is whatever it is we decide to do to allow it will affect almost all of the zoning ordinances in the city because it's interleaved. Not only is it not a permitted use in most of our zones, it's actually expressly forbidden in some of our zones. And the placement of them in a front yard is also expressly forbidden. So whatever it is we come up with, we're going to have to go line by line through the codes and change it. When we do that, the city will incur a codification fee for whatever it is that you as the city council choose to have as the ordinance. There'll be a codification fee, which is a per page fee.
About $60.
By the time we affect all of those pages,
60.
it starts to run the bill up. If we do short-term rental as some kind of an ordinance, it will also affect the codes, and so there would be another codification fee unless we work on the two of them together, so that once you have decided what the ordinance will look like, then Cindy can package it to the codifiers as one thing, and we're not then paying for them to rewrite the same pages twice. So, having said that, if you want to address the parking of RVs, the city street one is relatively simple. If you choose not to do it, it's already done. Those codes are in place. Can't park it on the city street except maybe for a few hours while you're loading and unloading, getting ready to go. The parking on the private property is going to take more thought because part of the concern is the use of a trailer or a motorhome as temporary residence for family reunions or graduations or something when you've got a lot of family in town. That one, last time we did this, raised the hackles of our motel owners, our B&Bs, and our RV park owners. I don't think their concerns have gone away, so we'll just have to work our way through that. So we're not talking about a fix going to be done by December. It's unlikely to happen that fast. So if that's what you want us to do, we will move forward on it, but be forewarned that it's going to be complex, and some of the solutions may be unpalatable to some of our residents. And I'm sure we're going to just kind of bump up against something where we've got no choice to do or not do things, and you guys may take some heat for that. The third item was the short-term rental of single-family dwellings. Short-term being less than 30 days is the state standard. Most of these dwellings are, of course, in the residential zones of R1 and R2. Not all of them, but some of them. So if somebody wants to rent, the question then comes to the city, do you want to regulate it in some way, and if so, how? So we've held 2 hearings with the public, well attended. Kind of blew the planning commission away. Normally we sit and look at a blank wall here because there's nobody in the audience. But we actually had warm bodies in the room that were happy to engage with us and had good stuff to say. And this is also not going to be an easy thing. What you have in your package of goodies is a 2-sided piece of paper that is my compilation of the public comments, your comments from the workshop that we did, and then some discussion that we've had at both the planning commission meetings where we've talked about this. And I just kind of broke it down into, on the front page, the opportunities, the good stuff that comes with having short-term rentals, and the concerns that people have. Some of them are actual negatives, and some of them are just questions about what will really happen here. But I wanted you to see what we've done, what we've heard from people so far, including some of your own comments. And I thank you very much, councilmen, who were able to attend both of those hearings. I think it's real good for you to hear the people. I think it's real good for them to see that you're listening. So I appreciate that. On the back side, the top, there are the questions, the comments, and the observations that we've heard about the issue of short-term rental. And then at the bottom are suggestions that have come out of these public comment periods and from you at the meeting and from our own discussions as a planning commission. It is by no means the end of the list, but these are the ones that came out of the evenings where we had the public hearings. So they were triggered by the stimulation of different ideas and different people in the room. I'd like to call your attention to the questions and comment numbers 9 through 12, because this is where we actually get some data. Not that it's hard data, it hasn't been verified by actually going out and counting or doing anything that's fancy like that, but it gives you a feel for what the playing field is. And you can also see in reading any of this that the coin has two sides. For some people, allowing short-term rental of single-family dwellings is a positive. It gets them some cash flow, it puts a body in their house, it makes the neighborhood look more viable and lived in. It generates potential tax revenues for the city. On the other side of that coin is the lodging industry, who is uniformly opposed to this because they see it as taking bookings away from their rooms and money out of their pocket and a decline in tax revenue to the city. So you can see that there isn't really a clear road here. It's some people are going to like it, some people aren't going to like it. But what I want to bring to your attention, and I think this is important, at this point, the Planning Commission has seen almost no persons who are owners and occupants of single-family dwellings in residential neighborhoods. So we don't know what the general populace thinks of this idea. We don't have that feedback. And we're likely to schedule a third public hearing on this if you wish us to pursue the short-term housing question, to see if we can't generate some input from the people who live in our residential neighborhoods. We have identified one definite sticking point right now, no matter what you decide to do, is that it appears that the rental of single-family dwellings on a short-term basis in residential zones isn't allowed by our current code. It's a little bit questionable because our code is land use and rentals is actually an occupancy issue. It is also not real clear because this is a new thing for the state of Utah. It's happening all over. And it hasn't been litigated in our Utah court system to know what side of the law we're dealing with here. Are they commercial properties? Are they not? But those, that kind of thing is homework if you want us to pursue this. But like the question of the RV parking in the neighborhoods, it's not going to be quick. It's probably not going to be clean and swift. And there's probably going to be people whose feelings are quite angry. So the Planning Commission would like you to know that, like you to know that we're willing to proceed, but we'd also like to know that you still want us to.
I think, didn't we get, I know we got a couple different feedback, like I know when I went to Walter Bird, the first time I heard a message back that he said that there might be a problem with it, and the message he gave to the Saunders was there was no problem with it. So,
I think that's basically the dilemma you're looking at, isn't it? I mean, it's
Yeah.
I, for one, would like to see you pursue it. All of them, all three.
I think my worry, and I'm talking about specifically about the short-term housing, is that it's going to be an ongoing issue, I think. I mean, it's an ongoing issue all over the state. And my concern is that, okay, well, we've already allowed it to some extent, and if we're going to allow it, then we ought to make sure it's in writing somewhere that it is allowed. Otherwise, I think we open ourselves up for lawsuits. I don't think any of us want. I didn't attend the last meeting before that, though. It seemed like there really wasn't a precedent set in the state. So I don't know if anyone would have any meaning there. But personally, I think if we're going to allow it, then we need to do something about it.
Well, since that first meeting, the one you attended, Oliver made some contacts with other communities that have put things into place or haven't put things into place to find out what worked for them and what didn't go well for them. And we have since received that staff report from Oliver. But we haven't had time to go through it. Our meeting ran a little long last time. We got out at 10 o'clock, which is unusual for the Planning Commission. And we decided that our homework for the next meeting is to read that stuff and think about it and come back with some ideas, if you want us to pursue this, on how it might be managed in a way that still protects the values of a single-family neighborhood and doesn't do in our lodging industry.
I mean, basically we have three options. We either say, no, we're not going to allow it. We say, well, we're going to allow it, but we're not going to change the code. Or we say, we're going to allow it and we're going to need to change the code, right?
I think the one is that you're going to ignore it, not allow it.
Yeah, ignore it.
So just from my own perspective is recognizing it. So if you're recognizing it as commerce versus, because you really have no other way to know whether they're full-time renters, part-time renters. I mean, you do, but we don't have visibility on the transactions. Right? We don't, but with all the other codes, if it's noisy, if it's, parking, all of that's continual. And so by saying that we're currently allowing it, I don't know that that's, I mean, it's it's obvious that it's happening, but not that we're turning away from the ordinances that we have in place by saying we're allowing it. It's just something that either exists or it doesn't, but enforcement-wise, it's not like we don't have anything that says here's the process. And so I don't know if that makes sense or not, but
In reading through the concerns, you'll notice there's kind of a theme to that. People are concerned that the proper taxes be collected and paid to the state, that the right kind of insurance is carried on the property, that's protection for the neighbors as well as the property owner, and that the nuisance value of having new people coming and going all the time in a neighborhood is somehow considered in the process. To me, and this is just my personal read of the comments that we heard, those three things seem to be the actual issues. Some of the other concerns that are raised, like Ty said, we have ordinances in place that address parking and noise and garbage and that kind of thing. That doesn't make it any less of a worry for the folks in the neighborhood, but the city doesn't have to write a new code for that. We've got stuff we can use. But the question is, where does it fit? And the problem is that the properties that would likely become short-term rentals are all in the R1 and R2 zones. And if it's defined by the city as commercial, then that is not compatible with those zones. And if you define it as not commercial because there is no on-site manager present and it's for less than 30 days, then it's not clear in our code, which is maybe a little bit of why Walter came out on both sides of the issue, because it is not clear and it hasn't been litigated in Utah, and so there's really not a body of case law to guide the city here.
I think we'd run into, personally, I think if we decided to declare short-term rentals commercial, I think we're gonna get into an issue on long-term rentals being commercial. I don't see much of a difference myself, except the time that they stay there, you know. So I think there's an issue there too.
Yeah, you're probably right.
One of the other concerns, and you probably have it in your list, but was the potential effect on property values and rental rates. And we're going to be looking at low and moderate income housing. And in a lot of communities, look, if there's a lot of short-term housing, it can really affect those two things. So, and then I think someone was asking about tax values, you know, as well. Would it be taxed on a commercial basis or a residential basis?
When I lived out east, I lived in Lancaster, which was big on tourism, and they did rent out. You can rent homes. They had to have go to the town, and they get a special license, and it's basically an at-home business. They'd have to have proper insurance because in case someone get hurt, things like that. And it didn't really impede on the hotels, motels, because these were families looking not to stay in a hotel all the time, but that could have a home, do their own cooking, and have a place to be. And from working at the Welcome Center, we're trying to increase the tourism here. We want people to stay in Monticello and not send them somewhere else that they can rent a home. So it would be a positive thing for Monticello. And it, like I said, it wouldn't really impede on the hotels, because if you're going to stay for a whole month, do you want to stay in a motel? Or do you want to have a place with a kitchen and your kids can play on the front lawn, and there would be some regulation for noise. I mean, we have a noise ordinance. We have to regulate it.
Yeah, I know there was some discussion, and I'm sorry, like I said, I wasn't there this last time, about possibility of, if we do make it a permitted use, having some type of a permit or application that they had to come in, you know, register basically with the city and say, proof of insurance or whatever. And I think, you know, something like that is a good idea. That, number one, we know who's doing it and know that they have a business license and that they're paying taxes, or that they're supposed to pay taxes at least. But I think something like that is necessary. I think we're going to permit it. If we decide to permit it, then we're going to have some type of way to track it.
I think it'd be pretty interesting to hear what Oliver's gathered from other communities.
It is an interesting assortment of things that people have tried, yes.
But, yeah, there's a huge variety of things you can do.
So the question really is if you guys want to, if you get the feedback from us that you should continue to pursue it. And to me, you're far enough along in it, and you still got some crucial information to go over. I think you need to keep, my opinion, you need to keep pursuing it.
So is the city going to say, yes, this is defined business? Because that's a big deal for how we approach it.
Can we see what like I say, the stuff that Oliver's gathered, I think would be valuable for us to decide, for me to decide.
What the,
That original one that he sent out addressed that quite
Yeah,
heavily.
the white paper that he sent out was good, but he has since gotten additional information out of Utah cities several Utah cities that have given this a try. Some of us have been doing homework. I talked to a commercial banker about some of the questions about property values and buying and selling and that kind of thing, and how it is potentially impacted by doing it or not doing it. And there's some fire code questions that we have about whether a house rented on a short-term basis has to meet different fire code than just a single-family dwelling might be that's either owner-occupied or long-term rental. There's things like that that we just haven't had a chance to find out. So you're correct. There's still a lot of information that is probably out there that we need to pull together.
Now that list that you're talking about Oliver put together, that's what you guys got last meeting, right?
Yes.
Now, I don't think the council got any of that information. Can we get a copy of that?
Sure.
Good.
Yeah, so you just got it from different city managers across the state. And how they,
Yeah, maybe email that.
so how they've structured it, how they've implemented, and then kind of their opinion on any effect that it's had on their community, so.
So are we all in agreement that we probably need to look into this more and keep proceeding on it? I think so. I mean, I think it's going to be an issue forever. So it's something that we ought to start tackling.
I agree with you in that. I just, I think there needs to be something on file just for the mere fact like we talked about. So if there is some kind of problem, the city knows who to get hold of. Other than that, we're dealing with property rights here, and our property rights are already infringed upon a lot. To take away someone's ability to make some money off a house that's sitting there, I think we need to be careful the road we're going down, and same with the RVs. Person ought to have the right to park their RV on their house, and if their family comes to stay the weekend to go to a family function, they ought to be able to stay in it. I don't think the city should even, we've got a lot of things to worry about. I don't think that's one we should waste our time with. But that, I would just say, we need to really, if we're gonna research stuff, let's research and look at property rights too, so we're not infringing upon those, and keep those in mind.
So, and back to, I mean, you have the three different things. Personally, I would like to see that, because you said it would be pretty straightforward, let's tackle the RV park stuff. I think, I agree with you, I think that could be pretty straightforward. The RVs on streets and parking, and that's going to continue to be an issue, but I get the opinion, and I remember from when we had these discussions before, it's very, very complex, and I know last time we did it, I mean, there was a lot of hours spent putting together proposals, and we just never could agree on anything, and so I almost think let's kind of backdoor that one for now, where we have these two other more.
But if it's so intertwined with what we're doing, it would be more cost effective for the city to, I mean, it's an issue that
It's going to be for
the city council couldn't come to a conclusion last time, but they really need to.
Let me ask you, if you happen to have the electronic copy of what we came up with before, it has disappeared off the city's server, and the planning commission doesn't have, none of us have a copy of it, and Oliver was unable to locate it. I doubt that Ty's even had a chance to look for it. He's been so busy. Cindy hasn't been able to find it. So if you are the sort of keepers of electronic trivia on your computers, would you mind looking, and if you've got a copy of it, forward it to Ty?
Do you know what date that was, or any kind of time frame?
Who was the planning commission staff member at that time?
I think it was more than one person. Greg was in on it, but I don't
Greg
think he...
Westfall?
Greg was in on it at the end, but I don't think he was in on it at the beginning.
So Ruth maybe started it with you?
I mean, I remember when, it was probably the first year I was a councilman, is when we discussed it in council, and we decided to just
So
kind of.
that was with Greg.
Yeah, it was definitely with Greg, and we just decided to put it on the, well,
Well, the
because Kelly
planning-
was here, I wouldn't be surprised if it was still when Kelly was here, though. Because Kelly was here for about 6 months or so after I got here.
When we started the whole process of redoing our zoning codes, which was a multiple year process, we were also looking at that RV issue because it's obvious that what's on the books now doesn't work, isn't practical, doesn't even fit the city's needs. So we were looking at it then, and I think that started with Ruth.
It was never written into an actual ordinance though, was it? It was just a draft.
It was a
somewhere.
draft,
Just a
and we can't find the electronic copy or the paper copy of the draft. So what I'm asking is, if any of you have a copy, please give it to Ty, and maybe we won't have to reinvent so many
And
wheels.
I'll look
It's
through.
probably in the planning commission book.
Uh,
If we could locate the date, it should be in that book with the handouts, I would think, and it probably would have been Stephanie was your recorder.
Could have been Stephanie.
Where do you back up stuff, DVDs?
I don't know. The planning commission has only just recently begun to put our documents on the shared server where we can all get to them. So I'm sort of ignorant about what happened
If we could
before
get that
that.
book though, if we kind of decide on a time frame, we might be able to find it.
So just for the record, that was my notes on the discussion, and so in my head, it sounded exactly like we presented all of that. That's why I put it here. I had 3 lines.
That's
So
why we had
I-
Lee doing it.
It's like
Mr. Mayor, am I hearing that we are to move forward with all three?
You guys want to move
And
forward
the
with all three?
priority, the
Yeah.
priority is the RV park, get that done
Yeah.
out of the way.
That one and the short-term rentals, I think, are the priority. I mean, I think we definitely, I agree that the RV parking is gonna be an issue forever, so we gotta do something with that, but like you say, it's gonna be a huge project, I think. So I think these other two are more pressing or easy at the time.
Well, I think we can
I
find those
think-
original notes, then it shouldn't be too bad. 'Cause you
It
guys
would
did a lot
help.
of work on that to begin with.
Yeah, it would help,
Yeah. Take a year off of it anyway.
maybe. Are you
Lee,
sure you didn't squirrel away a copy, Scott?
I gotta get to my other computer.
Okay.
It came to city council too, and I keep all the city council documents.
Yeah. It
So
did
we
come
can
to
kind
city
of-
council.
Figure out when I might be able to find it in there.
Do you keep the agenda?
And I can search the agendas electronically.
Okay.
Lee, as you go forward with the STRs, you mentioned something about going and doing another public hearing for it and try to see if we can entice residents, homeowners in R1s and R2s to maybe come.
Yeah.
Give them one more chance to come and voice their opinions on that so we can get some feedback from.
And I'm
homeowners.
wondering if the city would entertain a display ad in the San Juan Record rather than, or in addition to the legal notice that the state requires that we have for a public hearing.
Or the new
If
sign that's
we-
going out.
If we wouldn't have, yeah, the new sign, if we couldn't have a display ad in the paper or something in addition at the post office that really targets what that hearing is about and why the residential neighborhood needs to pay attention.
And have it come from the city.
Yeah. One thing I think, we've had the 2 public hearings, basically people just come and talk. I almost wonder if it would be more useful if we could get some type of a, sample document together that says this is kind of the way we're proceeding, these are some thoughts we have. And then we could have the public hearing more about that, so we're not just listening to the same people come in and saying the same things they already have, but we could get public hearing about what we're working on. Does that make sense? I don't
Well,
know
it
if that's
does.
appropriate, but.
People tend to react to proposals.
Mhm.
But at this point, since I don't know how the residents of the neighborhoods feel, I don't even know how to address their concerns in a proposal. I mean, the planning commission can take a guess at it and, do one thing or another, but we could be in the wrong ballpark.
But why don't we do, I mean, we gotta start somewhere, and I agree. It's always easier to go in and see what's coming up, or what they're trying to propose, and then draw out the questions and, concerns on that. We had, like we talked about in the first meeting, and I think most of us were there and sort of agreed on that, is to, having something that they register with the city along that line. See, if we draw something up along that line and put that out and say, now's your time to come in and make comments on this, then they will get the feedback and the people coming in, and that kind of stuff, and have a direction that they can
So
voice.
can you have a public hearing and target one sector? Is that legal or kosher?
I don't know that you,
Because
that you
what, you
can't
can have a
target.
longer meeting because you'll
it's
have the same
open
people
to
coming.
everybody.
Yeah.
But
I think,
to get the message out that we need to hear from the residents. We've heard from owners of the homes that might be in this. We've heard from most of the motel owners in town, but we haven't heard anything from the neighbors.
you might be able to draft a proposal and then have a hearing on the proposal, but then divide the comments into for, against, or business owners, short-term rentals and residents. I'm not sure. Like, you wouldn't limit or control, but you could also maybe solicit the comments in a
And just for the record though, I mean, there's two of us so far. Steve Draper come in and as a homeowner and said, no, he was against it. And me as a homeowner, I made a comment that I'm against it because I'm concerned about resale values. So just for the record, I want to make that clear that there are two residents that are against it. I just want to throw that out there.
And we had one resident comment that maybe we should just chuck the residential zone and define it as something else because the whole city is mixed use, in his perspective. Which is a really big rewrite. Zoning ordinance.
Much shorter.
And we did have one person who said basically that any limitation on it at all is limitation on their private property rights. And
I've said
they
that
had some,
several times.
there's some quotes, that sort of thing.
And we really don't know if the property value is gonna change up or down.
Yeah.
I mean,
I don't see how they change up.
well, if your value, your property goes up, then, I mean, if you're renting and creating money, your property's more valuable.
That
Anything
is,
at all, or-
and that is true,
For the house that's rented,
Yeah.
but what about the house
The neighbor
next
house,
door?
that's what you're saying, yes.
Well,
I think that's the one where
They
It
go
has
by
the same
the-
potential.
Yeah, it really does.
I mean, that's something we
I
could look
disagree.
into other cities and see if they've had.
Well, and that's
Experience
the
with that.
issue that we've got to kind of determine is if you're right or prime right.
Right.
And I think it could go both ways, either way.
Yeah, you're right.
And a
So
lot
I
of-
might agree with you, I just don't know yet.
And a lot of that has to do with how well you enforce zoning. Like, a lot of the stuff that we're not able to enforce because it's vague or it's contradictory or, just like the RV, a lot of that maintains the community in a certain way. And so some of it's on our shoulders too, to moving forward if we're enforcing code at all or how well we're enforcing it. And so there's a play. It's how good the code is and then also how well it's enforced might have something to do with if there's any impact at all.
Katie, any other questions? You got our direction? Yeah.
With the rental homes that I was talking about in Pennsylvania, it was a positive action for the owners to make the homes more presentable because it's competition. So the values of the homes themselves would go up because they're cleaning up the homes, they're sprucing them up, and they're making them look really good. So then your neighbor next door is going to go, wow, their home looks really good and their value's going up, so I better spruce mine up. So it might just be a roller coaster or a rolling ball of everyone going, hey, I'm gonna fix mine up, I'm gonna fix mine. And next thing you know, the whole neighborhood looks primo.
Yeah, it definitely could go either way. I think, I do think that's possible, definitely possible. Okay,
All right, thank you very much.
thank you for all your work that you do. Tireless, endless.
This last
And we
meeting
just throw
felt
things at
endless.
you.